So let's continue now before we go on to the Rebbe Rashab, which is a little bit from the complicated stuff, but we'll try and explain it in the best possible way. Let's go back first again to Rebbe Marash. So as we said last time, the Rebbe Marash is the Sfira of Netzach. The first Sfiras, Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes are included in Chachma, Bina, and Das. The Rebbe Marash is the Sfira of Netzach. Now with the Rebbe Marash we see that with his life, which the Rebbe Marash's life, his motto, as we all know, was Amikenisht, that the world says Amikenisht Arun Tergeit Min HaRiber. The world says that if you can't do things in the regular way, then you do them in a way which is above nature. And Yichzog says the Rebbe Marash Chatchila Riber. What does that mean? And the Rebbe explains it, that the Rebbe Marash's point is that in the world that says L'chatchila Runter, in the same world that sees that things have to go in a natural way first, in that same world, the Rebbe Marash says, we have to go L'chatchila Riber, which means we're in the world, we're not out of the world. And remember the idea that with the Alter Rebbe, it's bringing it into the world. With the Mittler Rebbe, it's going up, but in a certain sense, we're out of the world. We're dealing with the spiritual. The Tzemach Tzedek is Das, is bringing it down, connecting into the world. Now comes the Rebbe Marash and takes all of those things from beforehand and is going again. Netzach is once again on the right side, is the Chad Arich. Netzach is one of the long levels which comes down into the world, which is like the Chesed of the Alter Rebbe. But the difference between Chesed and Netzach is that Chesed is the Sfira, which is, let's look at it how it is in a person. Chachma Bina and Das is intellect. Intellect is what a person understands. It's something more, it's the source of everything. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes is emotions. Emotions are feelings. So it's the person feeling, it's already emotions. It's not any longer the source of everything. It's the emotion, the feeling of the person, but yet it's a feeling. Netzach Chod Yesod is already the beginning of action. Netzach Chod Yesod are the preparations for Malchus, which is action, is preparing oneself. So it's emotions, but it's what we call the Chitzonius Hamidus, not the Pnimius Hamidus, the inner Midas, which are for the person himself, for the person's feeling and emotions, how the person feels. But rather it's the Chitzonius Hamidus, it's the attributes that bring to action. Netzach and Hoyd are called the Shnei Kloyos Yoyatzos, the two kidneys of a person that give advice, but practical advice, how to bring out the action into practical, into the world. Yesod is connecting it and Malchus bringing it into action. So it's the same idea as Chesed, but it's bringing it down into the practical, more into the world. And that's exactly what the Rebbe Marash, what we're seeing here from the Rebbe Marash, L'chatchila Riber. What does it mean, L'chatchila Riber? L'chatchila Riber means I'm in a world. The world is a physical world, and yet in this world, I see that the reality of this physical world is a lakos. So I'm not dealing with the spiritual feelings of a lakos, not even in the chesed way, in the Alter Rebbe way, where it's still more spiritual, but I'm dealing with the fact that the physical world itself is a lakos. And that's the idea of l'chatchila Rebbe. That was the Rebbe Marash's whole life. The Rebbe Marash's life was that he lived with a harchava, more than any of the Rabbeim, with an abundance of gashmias. Tzemach Tzedek, we said, he had a connection, he had an understanding, so to speak, of Gashmias, unlike the Mittler Rebbe, where he didn't even understand when they would pay him he would get his paycheck, he would look at the coins, he didn't have any connection, he didn't have any understanding of it, he was totally separated, removed from the world. Tzemach Tzedek was dealing with the physical world, and as we see also even in his Chuvas and Halacha, etc., he dealt with very practical shailos of agunos and things like that. But the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek, was still extremely poor. He lived poor. He didn't live with Gashmis. In his house, they used to have then the furniture were wooden furniture, and they used to have furniture covers made out of cloth in order to make it look nice. So by the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek, there were no covers even on the furniture. The curtains were faded. And yet the Rebbe Marash lived next door to the Tzemach Tzedek. During the lifetime of Tzemach Tzedek, he lived in a way where everything was rich, everything was made out of gold. The Rebbe Marash also, his life was in a way where he lived on a day-to-day life in a miraculous way. So he lived in the physical world and yet above and beyond the physical world at the same time. And that's called Netzach. Netzach means victory. That's the power of the essence of the soul. The power of the essence of the soul to overcome everything in a way that it reaches the very essence that everything is godliness. That's the way that Rebbe Marash in his Chassidus also explained, that it's not that the world doesn't exist. The world is a true and real existence. But that real existence, what it really is godliness. So now, that's what the Rebbe Marash is saying in this Maimer. Why is it that Kav is called Shechina? Before we said Kav is called Shechina from the middle of the Rebbe, the Kav, the spiritual understanding and connection is Shechina, because it's already our understanding and our perception of godliness. The Rebbe Marash is connecting the highest and the lowest. And he's explaining why is Kav called Shechina? Because in the beginning when it came, its entire purpose is in order that there should be a world. Yes, it's the highest thing, it remains the highest things, it remains spiritual, and yet the purpose of spirituality itself, that means in the opposite way, the world itself is spirituality, and the spirituality itself is a world, so that there should be a world, so it should come down into the world. So even when it starts, you can already see in it the purpose, which is to come down into the world, and that's why it's called Shechina. Not just it's called Shechina because it begins to be the light that comes into the world, that it's the light that starts coming into the world, but deeper than that. It's called Shechina because even from the very beginning of there being a shine, it's there in order to come into the world. Now, it's a very interesting thing that just like we said earlier, that the Alter Rebbe, whose Chachma includes everything that follows, in a certain sense, in the later parts of the Midas, Netzach actually includes Hoyd Yesod and even in a sense Malchus, because that's the beginning of bringing it down into the practical. You see it practically also by the fact that just like all Chassidus is based on the Alter Rebbe, in a certain sense, all the Mamorim of the last few generations are all based on Mamorim of the Rebbe Marash, because all the Mamorim of the Rebbe Rashabs are Dibur HaMaschils, the beginning of the Maimer, and the content of the Maimer is what the Rebbe Marash said, but much more at length, similar to Alter Rebbe and the Middle Rebbe in this sense. And the Mamorim of the Frierdiker Rebbe are all based on the Mamorim of the Rebbe Rashab, even though it's in a different way, like we're going to learn in a moment. And the Mamorim of the Rebbe are all also based in explaining of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Mamorim in their own way, but it all goes back, just like everything goes back to Alter Rebbe to Chachma, everything really goes back to Rebbe Marash. So the Rebbe Marash's explanation is something which we're going to take it now to the next level with the way the Rebbe Rashab explains it. Now in the Maimer, we have now the explanation of the Rebbe Rashab of what Shechina is called. There's no direct seeming openly, it doesn't seem to have another quote now or an added explanation from the Frierdiker Rebbe, and certainly not something specifically said of an explanation of what the Rebbe explains it. But obviously in the Ois, there is both the explanation of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe is quoting the Frierdiker Rebbe. In fact, everything is based on the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer. And obviously, the Rebbe is saying the Maimer says obviously going to be an addition over here from the Rebbe. Now, the way I'm going to explain it is a way that some people will say isn't true. I'm going to explain first the Rebbe Rashab, and then I'm going to explain the way I understand the Maimer based on a lot of the other Mamorim. So although some people are going to say, some people I've spoken to say that they don't agree with this explanation of what the Frierdiker Rebbe and what the Rebbe are saying, but nevertheless the ideas are true, even if it's not the exact explanation of the Maimer, so the content can be put there, and it is based on a lot of things that the Rebbe says in many of the other Mamorim, especially Basi Legani Mamorim. So let's look at the idea of what the Rebbe Rashab says. As we said earlier, before the years of worlds, before even the worlds of Atzilus, before Hashem brought any light into the world, the first thing is that there is now Hashem's light everywhere. Hashem is everywhere, but together with Hashem being everywhere, His light, which means His shine, the revelation of godliness is also everywhere. Now, after that, there's the Tzimtzum HaRishon. It's called the Tzimtzum HaRishon, is the first Tzimtzum when Hashem removed, so to speak, his great light to the side, meaning he moved away the shine, the revelation of godliness, to a way that it can't be perceived, at least by the people, by us down here, and he created a vacuum, so to speak, and an empty space. That's called the Tzimtzum HaRishon. In this empty space, then Hashem brings down from the light that there was beforehand, and brings that light in order to shine into the world and bring a revelation of godliness in the world, but in each world according to its level. Atzilus more, Bria a little less, until finally Asiya, where it's almost totally concealed, this concept of godliness. Now let's understand, first of all, what does it mean light? It's not light. We sometimes picture light. It's not a light. It's not a shine. It's a spiritual light. But what does the spiritual light mean? Just like light is something that reveals, light is something that enables a person to appreciate the source of the light, because without that, the source of the light is something which is totally hidden. The light reveals it. So also the godly spiritual light means enabling us to appreciate, enabling us to have some type of connection to Elokus. That's what we call light. Now, in Chassidus, the mashal is very often brought as the light of seichel, the intellectual light, which means when a teacher teaches something to the student, that teaching is enabling, that's the light which enables the student to understand, to grasp the concept. That's what we call light, the light of wisdom. Let's look at the idea the way it is with a teacher, and then we're going to go back to the way it is with Hashem. When a teacher teaches his student, the teacher himself, whenever there's a mashal in Chassidus of a teacher and a student, it doesn't mean, let's say, if I would be teaching you, that's not called a teacher and a student. It could be that I happen to know certain ideas that you don't know at the moment, so I'll teach them, I'll tell you the ideas. That's what we call a teacher, but that's not a real teacher, that I just happen to know something more than what you do and I'm giving over to you what I know. A real teacher is one who's be'ein aroish. He's incomparable. The student is incomparable to the teacher. A teacher that just know more than the student. The teacher is on a totally different level than the student. The teacher is connected to that essence of the wisdom of the ideas, and he's imparting these ideas which are beyond the student, so that the student can be able to grasp them and connect to them. That's a teacher, and that is only by a Rebbe and a Chassid. Where a Rebbe says a Maimer, it's not just that he's telling me more information that I didn't know. The Rebbe is on a totally different level. He's connected to this essence of godliness. He's now trying to give me the ability to connect to it as well. Now, in order for the teacher, because the teacher is incomparable to the student, in order for the teacher to teach a student, if he just tells the student the ideas the way he has it, the student will never be able to grasp it. The teacher has to forge a connection between two people who there's no connection, the teacher and the student, to create a connection. Now, in order to create that, and not just a connection, but an intellectual connection, a connection which can be understood. In order to create that connection, the first thing that the teacher does is he removes everything that his own seichel, his own mind, he sort of moves it to the side, he moves it all to the back of his mind, so now he can concentrate on understanding an idea the way the student will understand it. So the first thing that he does, he takes that light that he has and he moves it to the side. Now let's remember, it's the same light, the same idea that the teacher removed to the side, to the back of his mind. It's that actual light which he's now trying to take and give over to the student, because it's part of that, but he can't give it the way it is. It will be too much. So he has to remove it to the side and then take from it a small ray and give that over to the student. So he removes it to the side. That's the light. Moves it over, and then he starts to take now a small bit of it, but it's not just a small little bit, a small bite-sized size of what he's giving. He's giving over now in a totally different way, in a way that the student can actually connect to it. However, like we said, it is the same light that he's giving over. More than that, the whole purpose of the teacher having light the intellectual light that he has is in order that it should be able to be given over for him himself. It doesn't have to be called light. It's there. It's him. It's part of him. In order to give it to someone else, that's why it's light. It's something which can connect to someone else. So now in the light, in the idea, in the mind or the intellect of the teacher, before he removes that light, there's two aspects to the light. There's one aspect to it which is only connected to him, to his essence. Then there's the aspect of the light which is able to be taught to someone else. Not as it is, because it's totally beyond being taught to someone else as it is. After it will be removed, it will be able to be taught to someone else. These two are the source of the way the teacher teaches it to the student after, which is the two ideas of Oyer HaSoiviv and Oyer HaMamali. The root to Oyer HaSoiviv is the light, the way it's for the teacher himself. The root to Oyer HaMamali is the light, the way it can be taught to someone else. We're going to have to stop here, and we'll continue, Mitzvah Hashem, explaining it next time.